China at the beginning of the 21st century. The face of the Middle Kingdom is changing, and the way people live their everyday lives is also undergoing rapid change. Consumerism rather than Confucius, individualism instead of the extended family. The pursuit of modern Western values is causing more and more conflict between the generations. In China too, the result is an increase in psychic disorders. Europe, with its long tradition of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, is an important research laboratory for Chinese doctors. Contacts with Vienna, Sigmund Freud's native city, are particularly interesting. But China, with its traditional Chinese medicine, also has a significant contribution to make to the exploration of the human psyche. Vienna hosted a symposium on the theme of psychosomatic medicine in East and West, an intercultural dialogue.
It's interesting that they think such a lot of Freud in China. I wasn't aware of that, to be honest, and then I started to read more, and it became clear to me that it was worth exploring further. And then I thought there was more that could be done with the idea of acupuncture and psychosomatics, and a few names occurred to me that could make the connection clear. They are names that have been mentioned already today. I don't have any pictures here. The names were Confucius, Lao Tse, Sigmund Freud, and above all, C.G. Jung. And another important one, Richard Wilhelm, a terrific German who spent 20 years as a Protestant missionary in China and was proud to say that he never performed a single christening. That's pretty sensational, but he was much more interested in Chinese literature and Chinese culture. As I see it, there's a very big difference between Chinese medicine and Western medicine. Chinese medicine is not interested in looking at what's inside the body. It contents itself with what happens on the outside. That accounts for the problems we have when we talk to a neuroanatomist or a neuropathologist. What is this? Where is that? Nothing is the same. The liver isn't the same. The heart is not the same. In a lot of cases, we don't mean the same thing. Chinese psychotherapy, psychology is relatively young. It's a bit like in communist countries. If the system's working, there is no disease. If someone is very devout, he doesn't get sick. But that isn't true. People are now admitting that there is depression in China. There is mania. Schizophrenia isn't always just love sickness. It can have another cause. But it's all very laborious in a system that controls the way people think.
Psychotherapy has as its subject the soul or psyche and the relationships that exist between people. That's a very general and a very broad definition, of course, and a counterpart in Asian culture can be found in the word qi. The soul is an invisible organ, but it's an essential organ because when the soul departs, we are dead. Or, as C.G. Jung once put it, the soul is the most powerful force on earth. And anyone who has tried to change themselves or anyone else can confirm that, because then we see how intractable and determined psychological attitudes and psychological behavior patterns can be. So the question naturally arises, how can we understand each other? You with your methods and your philosophy, and we with our methods and our philosophy. Because there is a fatal propensity to assume that something we have mastered ourselves is superior to anything else. The existential questions are the same over there as they are here. The questions about existence, the meaning of life, questions about friendship, love, self-determination, etc., and all the crises that life throws up. These questions trouble us all in exactly the same way, whether we are Chinese or European or African.
Sind die Menschen in einem anderen Land anders konstruiert?
Are people in another country wired differently as far as the psyche is concerned? I have thought long and hard about this question because I needed to read up a bit on ethno-psychoanalysis. Critical inquirers in ethno-psychoanalysis always ask, where does the other country start?
Psychoanalyse fragen immer, wo beginnt das andere Land?
If you go from District A in Vienna to District B in Vienna, you'll find a totally different mentality. If you dare to go from this Viennese district to Styx-Neusiedl, it's a foreign land. If you then drive on and you don't run out of petrol, you'll find yourself in a broad plain, where the people speak with an accent similar to mine.
Nicht ausgeht, sind Sie in einer weiten Ebene, wo die Leute mit ähnlichen Akzent sprechen wie ich. Gänzlich andere
A totally different region, but they insist that they belong to Europe. And if you drive still further, you'll be in what is now Romania, though the Hungarians haven't given up insisting that it's all Hungarian territory and was stolen from the brave Hungarians by the bad world powers after the First World War. The land in question is that part of Romania that was settled by the Saxons. I don't know where the foreign country begins, and that's one of the problems with ethno-psychoanalysis. It's hard enough to explain what psychoanalysis is, but where ethno starts? What I say is, let's look into the family structures. Are they similar to ours? Are they different from ours? If they are completely different from ours, that's an invitation to inquire into how the business of the psyche works in societies that are organized in different family structures and that have different patterns of child socialization. Then, the attitude to sexuality. I don't believe there is any geographical, topographical region on this planet where the attitude to sexuality, the collective cultural attitude to sexuality, does not influence the psychological condition of the people living in that culture. I just don't believe it. But if the influence is there, then the differences in the attitude to the collective, in the collective cultural attitude to sexuality, probably also bring about differences in the way problems arise, or in the way problems are dealt with. This doesn't amount to a foreign country. It just means a different approach to sexuality. And then there's such a thing as tradition. That, more than anything else, is probably what might be thought of as foreign land, homeland, almost foreign land. And by that, I mean not only the other districts of Vienna, the ones where you don't live, but the friendly homeland. Tradition is probably what we are most likely to be looking at when we speak of mentality.
How do we understand qi? Under the ancient Chinese philosopher said, qi is a substance, qi is energy, and also qi is information. And this idea is also from Lao Tzu. I have not enough time to show the picture. So when we understand qi, remember, substance, energy, and information, and they can transform into each other. And what is it in the root? The Taoist classic gives us clear idea that in the root, there's full of information. And the information is from your history. That means all of your life, your experience is inside your root. And Sigmund Freud will reveal this, and we call this personal unconsciousness. And Taoist classic also said the information is not only from personal history, but also from the history of parents and ancestors. And Carl Jung revealed it, and it was called collective unconsciousness. And Taoist classic said the information inside our root is not only from personal history, not only from the history of parents and ancestors, but from the universe, from the beginning of the universe and life. And this is another Qigong classic. It's also famous as the secret of golden flower. And it said, our body is a small heaven, is a small universe. And we live inside the bigger universe. And the bigger universe is inside our small universe. That's a very interesting viewpoint. So that means inside our root, and you, and I, and him, he or she, all of us have the same root. So we have a lot of things in common. And I heard just the first session, some people ask the question, when the people fall in love, what's the difference between East and West? I think most of this same.
The General Hospital for Traditional Chinese Medicine, or TCM in Beijing, the Guangangmen Hospital, is one of the best in China and has an excellent reputation worldwide. It isn't just a clinic where patients are treated, it's also a teaching hospital and a centre of research. For many doctors from the West, it's an attractive training centre for studying TCM. 2,000 outpatients are treated here every day. Most of them can be found in the acupuncture ward. With chronic diseases like migraine, asthma or bronchitis, success rates of up to 70% can be achieved, hospital records claim. According to the Chinese theory of energy, vital energy or qi circulates through the body along specific channels, the meridians. If these meridians are blocked or affected by any kind of disruption, a person becomes ill. With the help of metal needles, which can be inserted into 361 different acupuncture points on the body, the doctor can dissolve blockages. In this way, the flow of qi is strengthened, and morbid qi is channeled out of the body.
If someone is ill, the internal organs and the meridians are disturbed. I can regulate these disturbances with the help of Chinese herbs, but I can achieve the same effect with acupuncture.
Professor Wang Weidong is Deputy Director of the hospital and head of the Department of Sleep Research. He's been working for years to expand the traditional forms of TCM therapy, in particular to include the treatment of psychological disorders like depression, insomnia or sexual problems. His specialty is Qigong hypnosis. Jin Shu Wu has suffered from depression for years. Before this treatment with hypnosis, she was prescribed nothing but psychotropic drugs.
这个病人是一个老病人。
The patient doesn't have a harmonious family life. She's anxious, depressed, and has difficulty sleeping. She was hypnotized very quickly through suggestion. Her breathing is more regular and deeper. She's no longer aware of her surroundings. She's only influenced by what I say to her.
跟家里人不合吧？很好，对，很好啊。
Dr. Wang Weidong wakes up the 56-year-old with acupressure and encouraging words.
搓搓手，使劲搓搓手，对，按摩按摩面部，搓一搓面部，哎，换法过来。
I suffered terribly in the Cultural Revolution. I still have emotional stress, and I can't sleep.
There is an authoritarian basis to Chinese hypnosis. The attitude of the patient towards the therapist is supposed to be one of trust and respect. 53-year-old Wang Li has suffered from insomnia for 10 years. She feels better since she's been coming here. These treatments are strenuous for Dr. Wang Weidong too, and take a lot out of him. He whispers a stream of calming words into Wang Li's unconscious and suggests possible solutions.
It's my 4th time here, and I do notice an improvement. I'm able to get to sleep now, and in my daily life I feel better emotionally.
The physical sensations of warm, cool, and agreeable are appealed to. The notion is suggested of bright red blood enriched with oxygen, flowing through wide arteries and awakening sensations in the organs and parts of the body. Everything is intensified by focusing this idea on parts of the body and the organs. A palpable sense of an imagined experience comes into being with several sensual modalities, which can be intensified by the addition of smells, tastes, sounds, musical tones. Sensations of touch, for example, the feel of wind stroking across the skin, and many other things like warm streams of water, or a little waterfall, or a tingling in the veins. You can elaborate a very tangible picture. This application of rhythm and warmth, if adequately and evenly exercised, leads to a growth in reliance and trust, an experience of the natural relationship with the original matrix. That means deep regression into earliest experiences. The regressed patient always sees himself or herself in purely physical terms, and not in terms of concepts and thoughts. And this encourages a climate of relaxation, calm, with the possibility of recovery, recuperation, growth, etc. Under the pressure of the craving for survival, depth psychologists call it primary narcissism. This is put to use. The rhythm stimulates the building of structures. Conflicts arising from the unconscious are let go of, and symbolic forms and scenes and colours and figures can be experienced. The spirit soars and, thanks to the anxiety, let go as it does so. The verbalization of these feelings and where they should be directed becomes clearer. So, in hypnosis, by means of well-targeted instructions and coping strategies in the helper, the expert practitioner has a good chance of providing possibilities of resolution. Resource finding, they call it now in post-trauma therapy, which in a protected situation the patient can take on board.
with the development of the living standard of the people, the incidence of type 2 diabetes mellitus grows year by year. As you know, this disease is a psychosomatic disease, so the psychological condition of these patients has caused more and more public concern. So a psychosomatic treatment for type 2 diabetic mellitus is urgently needed, and Qigong can answer precisely to this need. Qigong, as an important component of the traditional Chinese medicine and the Oriental culture, Qigong has a history of several thousand years. Diabetes mellitus is similar to the disease named Xiaoke in traditional Chinese medicine. A general treatise on the causes and symptoms of disease. This book, edited by imperial physician Chao Yuanfang nearly 1,300 years ago, contained the earliest record of treating Xiaoke by Qigong therapy. The prescription in this book treating Xiaoke by Qigong therapy combined Daoyin, a kind of Qigong by walking. And this self-training began with Daoyin and ended up with walking. The Qigong department of Guang'anmen Hospital has a history of 10 years. The left picture shows the main building of our hospital, and the Qigong department is on the 7th floor. And the right picture shows the Stafford Qigong department of our hospital. These 4 pictures show the type 2 diabetic patients who were practicing A-section blockade in our Qigong practice room. We have been doing researches on the effects of Qigong on type 2 diabetes mellitus, cooperated with Japan Waseda University since 2004. We have finished the first research and we are arranging data of the second research. And the next project is psychological effects and sleep quality of Qigong 6-character formula to the type 2 diabetic patients with insomnia.
Twice a week, the Guang'anmen Hospital offers Qigong classes for patients with diabetes mellitus. It is a method that comes from TCM, combining acupressure and breathing and meditation techniques with flowing, concentrated movements. Traditional opinion believes that the movements result in the elimination of waste products from the body, the mobilization of energies, and a reduction of stress and anxiety.
I had difficulty sleeping and was washed out and had no energy during the day. I heard from friends that Qigong could have a beneficial effect on people with my disease. I started with the 8 treasures exercises. And I noticed some benefit immediately.
I used to suffer from insomnia. My doctor advised me to take up Qigong. Qigong has changed my life. I sleep well now, and I'm on much more of an even keel. If you'd put me on this stage 15 years ago and told me I had to give a lecture before an audience, I'd have prayed for the earth to open and swallow me up. What for many people, for many of you, is not a problem at all, namely to take the stage and be at the center of attention, something that seems to be the aim in life for some people, was always associated for me with anxiety and uneasiness. And until about 12 years ago, I was quite good at avoiding this challenge. At school, I always managed to get out of reading a paper in class, and my oral contribution left much to be desired, quite simply. But 12 years ago, in 1995, I started work here in the outpatients acupuncture clinic, and my job involved a certain amount of presentation. So it soon became clear to me that I wasn't going to be able to go on avoiding these public appearances. And I can still remember as if it was yesterday. The topic of my first lecture in the training program was the functional circle of the lung and large intestine. And the thought of it literally took my breath away. But while I was preparing my talk, I recalled a form of Tai Chi that I'd learned 5 years earlier and practiced fairly regularly. While I was working on my lecture, I did actually do these exercises. I ended up doing them every day. And the connection between these breathing exercises and my topic, the functional circle of the lung and large intestine, gave me the idea of making the exercises a part of what I was going to say. And while I was standing up here, starting out with an exercise, I suddenly became calm. My thoughts were concentrated, and I was able to give my talk with no problem at all. It was only years later that it actually became clear to me that I owed the awakening of my self-confidence to the regular practice of Tai Chi. Legend has it that Tai Chi was created by a Taoist monk who was walking one day in the Wadong Mountains, the birthplace of many myths, when he saw a snake and a crane fighting. Their movements, attacking and then retreating again, inspired the Taoist monk, and he created a form of Tai Chi. Histologically, though, and if we look at the historical drawings, we find a different story behind the origin of Tai Chi. According to this, there was a general in the Ming dynasty, General Chen, who was very enthusiastic about the martial arts. And after Ming dynasties had been defeated in war, this general, probably a little bit frustrated, withdrew into the mountains and dedicated himself to the martial arts, creating over many years of practice a new style of fighting, today known as Chen-style Tai Chi Chuan. Other well-known styles like the Yang style, the two Wu styles and the Sun style come directly from this Chen style. In other words, although Tai Chi was originally one of the martial arts, the basic principle and the postures are no different from other forms of Qigong. What you see here is just a small selection of the different types and forms, but their principles, such as posture, centering and attentiveness, and unity of body, soul and breath, do not differ. A good yoga session is always meaningfully structured, with the exercises all complementing each other. This is just one example, but there are exercises that are performed standing, sitting and lying down, and of course all of them have an effect on the spine. The spine is stretched, straightened up, it becomes more supple, and the joints and the muscles are affected too. In general, one can say that muscle groups are strengthened, stretching takes place, joints are made more mobile, and a lot happens through coordination, especially in the exercises where movement is involved. Then breathing plays a very important role. Usually, and for me this is the mark of yoga teaching, breathing has to be involved. If somebody only does body exercises and doesn't include breathing at all, it wouldn't actually count as yoga for me. Breathing is part of it, and also concentration. We should concentrate on the exercises as we perform them. Why do we do breathing exercises? If we look at one of the ancient yoga texts, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika from the 14th century, it's made very explicit. If the breathing is troubled, the spirit is also troubled. If the breathing is calm, so is the spirit. In other words, the main idea, the purpose of breathing exercises is to calm the spirit. particularly important is the structuring of each individual exercise, and this applies basically to all yoga exercises. It's important to progress step by step and not aim to achieve the final exercise right at the start, so to speak, but to get there gradually. And with breathing exercises too, it's very important to take note of contraindications. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika is inclined to exaggerate sometimes, but I've included it because it points out the dangers. Just as the lion, the elephant and the tiger only allow themselves to be tamed gradually, so it is with the taming of prana. The approach must be step by step. It can't be captured just like that, otherwise it can kill the practitioner. So it's dangerous to practice pranayama. Now, briefly, meditation, a very big subject, of course, a subject for a whole evening. It's presented here in a very oversimplified fashion, just a bare framework, because we have the opportunity today to get to know very different forms of meditation, and it's correspondingly difficult to survey the field. The basis for me is awareness meditation. We've already heard about that today, because I think it's a very wholesome exercise. Becoming aware of physical sensations, of breathing, of things that are going on in the mind, without evaluating them. And for many of us, that's a very difficult exercise, which we mostly don't succeed with right away.
A year later, scientists at Beijing's Guangangmen Hospital organized the second international conference on the subject of TCM psychology. Dr. Alexander Meng from Vienna was the guest of honor this time round. The aim was to bring the different forms of therapy in East and West closer together. In China, the need for psychotherapies is already very great. More and more Chinese people are choosing to opt for an analysis that follows the Western model.
Traditional Chinese medicine is an extremely valuable part of Chinese culture, and it's several thousand years old. It's a body of knowledge that comes from the people. Knowledge that is aimed primarily at maintaining good health and preventing diseases. Western and Eastern medicine complement each other wonderfully. In this way, their strengths and weaknesses can mutually compensate each other to the benefit of our two countries and of the whole world.
Alexander Meng was one of the first to bring acupuncture to Austria over 30 years ago. He speaks to an audience of mainly Chinese scientists on the subject of acupuncture in Austria through changing times. Tian Lu is professor of Qigong at the University of TCM in Beijing, but he's known by reputation far beyond China's borders. His subject is the positive influence of Tai Chi and Qigong on psychosomatic disorders.
Here in the East, we regard heaven, earth and mankind as a single indivisible unity. In practicing Qigong, I'm always striving for this unity, either through movement, through breathing, or through meditation. The aim is always the same, to experience the divine in myself.
This is the philosophy of Taoism, the doctrine of the true path. According to Taoist thought, Tao created heaven and the earth and is incumbent upon man through meditation and a virtuous life to become one with Tao. Many Western philosophers have been influenced in their work by this Eastern thinking.
Eastern culture, China, Korea and Japan, and then India too, first and foremost has a very rich repository in this area and is rich as well in concepts and experience. And now there is a great need for them to make up ground in the material sense. And then I believe the spiritual and the material, in terms of machines, will complement each other very, very well. And it is evident when we discuss this subject that we meet with a great deal of interest. In other words, East and West complete each other, to put it crudely, machine and mind.
Maschine und Geist.
Die seelischen Vorgänge sind tatsächlich.
Psychological processes really have to be seen as being the same in every country. They are just dealt with differently, and the spectacles through which they are looked at are different. One way of looking is through the spectacles of psychoanalysis. Different places will have different spectacles in use, which will correspond to the psychoanalytical spectacles. But we mustn't forget the time factor. It is not so long ago that we would have been taking a mortal risk if we said that the Earth revolved. It was considered life-threatening to maintain that the Earth is a sphere and not flat. In other words, we haven't known about psychoanalysis for very long. We haven't been able to describe gravity for very long. And those are things that were not invented, they were discovered. That is to say, in a few years' time, there will have been a complete exchange of information, and then this question will not be asked anymore.
The world has totally changed. We're confronted daily with all its great cultures, and we don't just get patients from the Far East, from China, for example. We also get a world of ideas. The intuitive world of yin-yang, for example, but also other concepts from Taoism, from Confucianism. We are confronted with them in the realm of experience of the patients and also of our colleagues. And to that extent, it is very important that we should develop this intercultural sensitivity.
In the last 100 or 150 years, yoga in India has advanced a great deal. Also through contact with the West, through new influences, there have been new developments. Increasingly in India and also in the West, doctors are becoming interested in yoga. The exercises comprise both the physical ones and the breathing exercises leading to meditation. And in all these areas, the positive exchange of ideas between East and West has led to great advances being made in the last few years.
If we all work towards a cultural exchange between East and West, we will achieve many new insights in the realm of psychotherapy. That will greatly benefit both sides.
我们希望达到这个作用。